Okay, Chair, you're live on YouTube whenever you're ready.
Thanks. Welcome, everyone. I'm Councillor Janet Thompson, Chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Board. I would like to welcome you to this virtual meeting. Can I remind all participants that normal rules of procedure apply? For example, comments and questions need to be directed through the Chair. Whilst members of the public can view this meeting via YouTube Live, they will not be able to actively participate or comment on proceedings. As this meeting is being live streamed, can I remind all participants that their conduct should reflect this? We'll go to the agenda. Have we got any apologies?
Yes, Chair. Apologies have been received from Councillors Marston, McIntyre, McTighe and Saunders. Councillor Hubbard is in attendance as substitute for Councillor Saunders. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Have we got any declarations of interest?
Can I come in there, Chair? I'm subbing for Councillor McIntyre as well.
Thank you for that, Councillor Lewis. Do we have any declarations of interest? Take that as a no. The minutes of the Overview and Scrutiny Board call-in on December the 2020, residual waste collections. I know everybody's got a copy of that and I'm assuming you've all read it. Can we approve them?
Approved.
Thank you. The minutes of the Overview and Scrutiny Board held on the 14th of January. Can we approve them? Can somebody approve them? Thank
Approve
you.
that, Chair.
Thank you. The Executive Forward Work Programme. Can we note them? And has anyone got any comments or questions regarding the Executive Forward Work Programme? Councillor Halawi.
Yes, I had a question on page 3 of the programme, which was under the heading of Executive Member for Finance and Governance. I note that the Equality and Diversity Policy has a triennial refresh of the policies to ensure compliance. I just wondered why we have a triennial refresh rather than a more frequent refresh and look at the whole area of policy. Why do we only have these policies refreshed every 3 years? Seems like a long time in between to me.
Is there anyone here to answer that? We'll make a note of that, Councillor Halawi, and get back to you on that.
Yeah, I'd like to. Yeah, that's right. My proposal would be that we have a more regular update and refresh of those policies, since they're so changing all the time. 3 years is too long a gap, in my opinion. Thank you.
That'll be noted and passed on. Thank you for that. Right, so now we'll go to Middlesbrough Council's response to the COVID-19 update, which is Tony Parkinson and Esther Miraku. I hope I've said your name right. So I'll hand over to you, Tony. Are you taking that?
Well, I'm just going to give a very brief introduction, Chair. Esther's going to be the star of the show today because I've not really got an awful lot to say. We're kind of in a steady state in terms of COVID response. You know, we're providing support to communities as it's required. We're providing support to businesses as is required. And you know, the only decision of note that we've made, you'll be aware of, Chair, because thanks a lot, you agreed to an urgent decision on the laptops for children. So I thought I'd just get Esther to give you an update on prevalence across the town and its impact, and then any questions about anything else to do with COVID, I'm obviously happy to answer, but I'm not bringing any information to this session. We're going to concentrate on the facts and the figures. That's okay. So I'll hand over to, well, depends how you want to play it, Chair. I'll either hand over to Esther now or I'll take any questions from me before that.
I think you'll hand over to Esther and then we'll take questions at the end. So I'll hand over to you, Esther. All right, thank you.
Thank you. The first slide that we've got looks at the regional position and the trends in COVID across the whole region. What this slide is telling us is that compared to the last, looking at the most recent 7 day period, which ends on the 6th of February, compared to the previous 7 days, most local authority areas in the Northeast region are seeing a downward trend in COVID cases. Middlesbrough is stable over the past 2 weeks. Gemma, if you could please move to the next slide. At the local front, we are seeing a downward trend, but as I said, just over the last 2 weeks, we've sort of plateaued. Since as the latest data that I've got here is up to the 10th of February, and on the 10th of February, we had 64 new cases of COVID-19. 526 cases have been diagnosed within the last 7 days, and we are at a rate of 373.1 per 100,000 population within the most recent 7 days. If you could please move on. In terms of and this slide basically tells the same story as the other one. I'd advise that you overlook the data that's on there for the 8th of February, because most of the time the reporting system is such that on the most recent date you have a low number and then it's added to on other days. Since the beginning of the COVID pandemic last year, we've had in total roughly about 11,000 cases of COVID-19 in Middlesbrough, in the Middlesbrough Council area. 526 cases diagnosed within the last 7 days, 858 within the last 14 days, and 1,462 within the most recent 21 days. Gemma, please move to the next slide for me. Thank you. This slide is looking at deaths that are associated with COVID-19. In total, since the beginning of the pandemic up to an ending on the 22nd of January, we've had 298 deaths that are linked to COVID-19. 4 of them were in the previous week, and our rate of deaths stands at 211.1 per 100,000 population. And the majority of those deaths have occurred in hospital, followed by a care home or at home. Next slide, please. This slide looks at the age breakdown to help us understand where to target our responses and which age group are we seeing more cases. As you can see, we are seeing the majority of our cases currently amongst the 23 to 34 year group. Next slide, please. The next 2 slides is just to give us a very, very broad overview of some of the clustering and outbreaks that we're seeing at the moment in our borough, and some activity that we are doing as part of the community testing sites. And with regards outbreaks, we have 2 outbreaks that are ongoing. Both of them are at a high multiple occupancy units. One is a mother and baby unit, and the second one is a supported living unit. And in terms of workplaces, we've had cases that are at the DWP offices. Teesside Universities also had a fair number of cases there, and Cleveland Cable Company, and on the roll Sandwich, plus Fair Source, which is a call center at the center of Middlesbrough. Next slide, please. And then, as part of our response, we are also asked by the national government to host a community testing program, which helps us to, through that program, we provide additional testing to essential workers who are not able to work from home during the lockdown period. So we provide support for them to test twice a week, and also to provide additional testing to any members of the public who would like to have regular testing. This program is for people who are not showing symptoms of COVID-19. So this is in addition to the testing sites that we already have for people who show symptoms of COVID-19. In Middlesbrough, we are planning for 3 of such fixed sites in the community. We've just gone live with a site at the Middlesbrough Sports Village, and next week, hopefully, we'll be able to go live at one at the Northumbsby Hub and the other at the Newport Hub. As part of the program as well, we are supporting essential workers, mainly social care staff, who are able to host a small test site within their department. At the moment, we've got we have three actively functioning as at the time that I did the slide, but now we've had one step down, and mainly because of staffing issues. So they've directed the staff to the community testing sites that's functioning now. So now we have Main and Cavendish House that's function and Resolution House that is active now. And we've also started training high-risk businesses to be able to, and for the high-risk businesses, is businesses with employees between 50 and 250 employees, to be able to support them to provide regular testing for their employees on site. Thank you. So I'll pause there for any questions.
I'll just make a comment, Esther. I'm glad to see that testing's taking place for people with no symptoms. I think that's a great idea. So yeah, that's pleased. So has anyone got any questions for Esther? I can't actually see everybody, so
Yes, please, Chair.
Yes, as well.
Councillor Higgins. Councillor Higgins.
I was concerned when you were talking about people who were in houses, where you said there was 42 residents shielding in one household. Did I hear right?
Yes, that's correct. For that particular high multiple occupancy residents, we've got 20 adults and 22 children. It's a mother and baby unit that hosts mainly asylum seekers. We've had 7 positive cases so far at that units, and the reason why we had to treat it as one house and ask all of them to self-isolate jointly is because of the way the venue is structured and the fact that it's difficult for them to social distance, and they've got some communal areas that are shared, as in bathrooms, kitchen, toilets. So we had to treat all of them as one household rather than multiple households.
So answer your question, Councillor Higgins.
It has answered the question, but it hasn't satisfied me, because I can't believe that 42 people are in the one house, and you know, 7 have been identified.
Yeah, it's similar to the other units as well, where we've got 50 people. So the 50 people, they've got their individual rooms, but then the way the high multiple occupancy unit is structured is such that they've got shared facilities, and therefore it's difficult to be able to just ask a few people to isolate and the others not to isolate based on the risk.
Right, thank you for that. I've got Councillor Coop, and then Councillor Cook, and then Councillor Story. So Councillor Coop.
Thanks, Chair. I've been worried for some time with the fact that you pointed out that it's staying about the same, about the 365, goes up, goes down, goes up, goes down. You did explain about companies over across leaving cables, etc. That could explain some of them. But is there any other underlying reason? Are we somewhere where it's still going to go high, or do you see it coming down? You've explained about the house multiple occupancy and things like that, but it just seems that we're in the highs. We're just staying at the same level, and that certainly concerns me.
I think one of the things we've observed is that if you look at one of the slides, following the very first lockdown, the number of cases went down very, very low. And then after the second lockdown, it went down to a certain level. And then after during this lockdown, it's gone to a certain level, but not as low as we expect. During this lockdown, there are still quite a lot of people who are still working because they are not able to stay at home, to work from home. Whereas if you compare it to the lockdown that we had between March and April, anybody who could not work from home was still at home. So we have more people working and leaving the house. It is an assumption that we're making that because more people are coming into contact from different households and mixing at the workplace, then the likelihood of cross-infection is higher. And that might be one of the reasons why we're not getting the symptoms down as quickly as it should be. And that's one of the reasons as well that we are hoping to support businesses and workplaces with regular testing so that we can help break the chain of transmission in the workplace.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Coop?
Yes, I think it does, but I would also agree with what they say about the work. If you go down the A19/A66, which I do occasionally have to do for work, the road is as busy during the day as it ever has. And you say, well, people go to work. Well, they don't move around all the time, but people seem to, and there seem to be a lot of people in shopping centres because they just probably want to be out every day. So I would say that the movement of people around the town and around the businesses seems as high, if not ever. The only thing that's slightly better is the 5 o'clock rush hour is not quite as bad, but I would say that the movement of people in Middlesbrough is as high as any time. So I can understand that. I just hope we can get the figures down, because we must be doing something wrong, or other people must be doing something right. We need to get it down as all the other areas in the North East has. So I just hope we manage to do that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Councillor Cook, did you have a question?
Yeah, I have two. So if you want to come back to me for the second one, that's okay. So I've been raising concerns about HMOs for quite some time. I'm thinking about other types, but these ones are also quite worrying. With Newark, I'm wondering, when we've had confirmed cases there, what happens? Is there a sort of a procedure that people then have to stay there, or because I'm just thinking there's some of the individuals that are dealing with Newark aren't going to be having COVID apps installed on phones or even have phones. So how are we then going to do that sort of community tracing to make sure that they're not impacting on others?
Just to confirm, one of the HMOs that I've listed on my presentation is Newark, and we had an outbreak there as well. So as part of the measures that was put in place, mainly because of the vulnerability of most of the residents at that premises, we had to look at support for them to make sure that they were provided with food, with meals 3 times a day as part of that. And then we also had to take into consideration their medications. So we've worked with foundations and Medics UK to support them by making sure they get their medications packaged. Some of them had their medications on a weekly because they had that sort of arrangement in place already. For others, Medics UK had to make an arrangement to deliver their medications on a daily basis. And the management of the facilities also worked very closely with us. We had to have an outbreak control arrangement and make sure that the residents are supported as much as possible. So far, we haven't had any issues come out of there, and they've completed their isolation period, which they finished on Monday. That's just gone past, and we didn't have any problems or issues with them, with the residents. We had to make sure that those who are tested positive, there was a bit of segregation for the bathrooms. So those who are tested positive were not allowed to share facilities with those who had not tested positive, but residents were supported throughout.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Cook?
Not really. So I am quite concerned that there was exposure to the outside community, and someone that I'm aware of who was definitely in that facility was definitely out in the community, and I'm just wondering if there's been no way of tracing that person. So I'm just wondering was there any sort of local lockdown for that facility so that people did not leave, essentially?
Yeah, the agreement was that the agreement, that the understanding that we had with the management was that the residents were not supposed to leave the premises throughout the isolation period. I was not aware that somebody at the premises had left, so I'll take it back with the management and have a discussion.
Right, thank you for that. I'll bring Councillor Story and then I've got Councillor Garvey. So Councillor Story.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I met with a head teacher in my ward earlier this week, and one of the concerns that she raised with us was was safeguarding and children who have been at home for some time now during the lockdown. And what I wanted to ask from a council perspective is, how are we assessing children who perhaps aren't in care but are at home perhaps in vulnerable homes, or homes where there might be a chance that the potential is for them to be taken into care in future if, depending on their circumstances, and how are we assessing the impact that this lockdown and having children at home for such a long time is having on children who perhaps are vulnerable in our town? Are we aware of any numbers, or what are the support networks that we're putting in place as a council to make sure that the impact of lockdown isn't detrimental to their development and to those families concerned?
I'll take that, Chair, if that's okay.
All right. Yeah, go ahead,
So
Tony.
I'll answer that as best I can, Matt. So during the last lockdown, we completed new risk plans on every child that is in our, and every child that had an education, health and care plan. So we conducted a review of almost 4,000 risk plans through that process, which reassessed the child's situation and the issues that would face them if they weren't attending school. We've maintained those plans, and through the review process that we have in place, we're making sure that we're on top of any new concerns that develop through that.
So answer your question, Councillor Story.
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Tony.
Right, we'll move on to Councillor Garvey. Councillor Garvey, did you have a question?
Thanks, Chair. Esther, at the beginning of the presentation, the other areas within the northeast, you said on a downward trend, slightly downward trend, and we'd stayed the same. But I've noticed that we're doing a lot more testing in this area, and would that have a tiny effect on our trend or not?
Just to confirm, all areas are doing a lot of testing at the moment, and Middlesbrough trends are going down. It's just that within the past 2 weeks, we've sort of plateaued. So we are observing to see whether the downward trend continues. So it's just within the last 2 weeks that we've seen that it's become stable, but all along we've been going down. The trend has been going down.
So answer your question, Councillor Garvey.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Esther.
Can I just
Esther, do it.
Chair? It's Tony. Is that
Yeah.
all right?
Yeah, that's fine, Tony.
Sorry, I was going to say, I think in Middlesbrough as well, Middlesbrough is far more urbanised than a lot of the other local authorities. We've got the same size population as 4 times as big as Middlesbrough geographically. So because we've got more people living in more urbanised situations, that is a contributory factor. We've got to recognise that deprivation is a factor too, and we've also got to recognise that Middlesbrough, is a major employment hub, not only for Middlesbrough but also for the Tees Valley. So I think there's lots of things, Councillor Garvey, that contribute to our figures sometimes higher. I'm confident that we're doing everything that we can do, and I don't think it's because of more testing, because actually if we look at the other local authorities, they've gone with more extensive mass testing programs before us, for example, so I suppose they could argue they're doing more testing than us. I think it's just the type of place Middlesbrough is that means that we're always going to be susceptible to rising or falls in our figures.
Esther, can I just ask, do we not have the figures of how many teachers or teaching assistants have actually come down with COVID? Because I know if a teacher or a teacher assistant gets it, then that has a knock-on effect within the children, because all the children are then sent home and have to isolate.
We would have that data based on the work that we do with the schools, but I don't have it on hand. So if you need that, I could check that for you later on.
Thank you for that, Esther. Has anyone got any more questions? Councillor Cook, I'll bring you back in, and then Councillor Higgins. Councillor Cook.
We've got a lot of testing in the north of Middlesbrough, but I'm a bit concerned that we sort of, because for a long time Newport had like the testing centre and we had like big drives going on there, but TS3 always seemed to be like really, really high on the rates. I've noticed that there is stuff going on in that area. I'm wondering, are we going to sort of try and localise it for Hemlington and Corby and those sort of areas to make sure that we make it as accessible as it can be?
The test site at Cannon Park, that's a regional test site. But at the moment, we've got the mobile testing units that's hosted at Hemlington, the Viewley car park next to All Nations Church on a Monday and Tuesday. And we've also got the mobile testing units that's on Cargo Fleet Lane, the 13 group car park on Wednesday to Friday. And we've recently also started a new local testing sites at the Pallister car park. So we're trying to spread the testing as broadly as possible. And as I said, we've just started a new community testing site at the Sports Village, and we're hoping to have another one in North Ormsby area. So we're trying to make sure that testing is accessible to all areas. And what we take into consideration is about who has access to car and therefore able to drive to a longer distance versus who might need to walk to the test sites, and try and put the drive-throughs where people are likely to go via car and put the local testing sites where people are likely to have to walk to the sites.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Cook?
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you.
I'm bringing Councillor Higgins. Councillor Higgins, did you have a question?
Thanks, Chair. Esther, would it be possible for you to send the slides around everybody on the panel? Because some of them went a bit quick, and I'm not so quick at reading as I used to be. So could we have the
I'm
slides?
happy for the slides to be shared as part of the minutes. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Esther. Thank you.
I've got a question, but I think it's more to Tony than Esther. Tony, are we arranging vaccines for the taxi drivers who have contracts with us to transport children and adults because some of them haven't been vaccinated and been turned away?
Actually, Esther's probably more knowledgeable than me on this, but there was a national kind of list of occupations and conditions that create the priority list. We're not controlling the vaccination programme. It's very much controlled by the NHS, with the hospital conducting vaccinations of particular workforces that fall within that priority list, and with over 80s and such like that. Community pharmacies and GPs doing those things in the community. I'm not sure where those people appear on the priority list. I don't know if you know or how the NHS is progressing.
Yeah, I just think,
giving out vaccines against that.
Yeah, I just think because we've got a contract with these taxis, Middlesbrough Council got a contract with them to transport children and adults, and some of these are vulnerable children and some of them are vulnerable adults, that, you know, whether they should be vaccinated. Esther, do you want to come on that?
At the moment, they are not classed as part of the health and social care priority group, as part of that group. So they would not technically be added as part of the JVCI categorization at this stage. I'll take your query back to the clinical commissioning group and to the COVID vaccination board and ask that question. But because I know what some other areas have done is that when there is a surplus dose of vaccine, for example, rather than allowing it to go waste, then if they have, let's say, somebody within that category available at the last minute, then they could offer that vaccine too. But I'll have to take your question, your query back to the board for a response.
All right, thank you, Esther. Has anyone got any more questions for Tony or Esther? No? Well, thank you very much, Esther and Tony, for that presentation and taking questions. Much appreciated. So you're welcome to stay, but if you want to leave, then that's fine, Esther or Tony.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, and move on to the agenda. We've got Executive Member, Councillor Ashley Waters here, who's the Executive Member for Regeneration, and Councillor Waters. Can you update us regarding your portfolio since you were last here in July, please? Thank you. So we'll let Ashley do that and then we'll take questions. So I'll hand over to you, Ashley.
Certainly, thank you, Chair. I'll put my camera on. If it crashes, I do apologise. If I get kicked out, so my portfolio basically covers transportation, the inward investment into the town, economic development, housing development, planning and building control as well. We have a few issues at the moment, a few key issues, what we're currently, and they will be, apart from the cat walking in front of my camera, and the cycle lanes on Linthorpe Road. We've got inward investment coming in at Centre Square, with the properties now largely there. We have Teesamp now largely let, or the units are under offer, which is fantastic news. And the Boho Zone area and properties as well going really well. On the economic development side, we obviously have the town centre issues associated with COVID, which is a huge impact, which we're working really well with, and our grants team are doing a massive amount of work on a ever-changing environment. I cannot give our revenue and benefits team enough credit. Dealing with Debbie Inglesby and Jeanette Savage, what fantastic teams they have, and if it wasn't for them, we would have lost a hell of a lot more businesses from Middlesbrough. So I have to say a huge thank you to them just while I'm doing this. Good news in that we have the Future High Street funds secured, £14 million, which is absolutely fantastic news again for our town centre and again for the Tees Valley, as like has been mentioned on this call. We are kind of a hub for businesses in the area, so a £14 million investment is just fantastic. And we're repurposing Captain Cook Square. I won't further detail for that if members want me to. So on our housing development side, we have Gresham, and hopefully see 13 on site soon, which our town that's been derelict for so long is just going to be so fantastic to see work going on in this area. And it'll hopefully give the people in Newport some encouragement that things are going to get better down working as a council with 13 to bring this this part of Middlesbrough back to life and give it some hope. We have the Boho Bright Ideas. That's for 60 units, and they're going to be on site very soon as well, which is going to be another fantastic development, getting people living in the town centre, working in the town centre. Absolutely brilliant news with that one. We've got agreements with other developers as well for housing at Middlehaven, which is brilliant news. Again, it's an area of Middlesbrough that's just been left for so long. To see things going on here and to see buildings and to see people back living there will just be absolutely fantastic again for the whole town. And obviously we're currently ongoing with the Stainsby consultation, which will be carrying on to, I believe, the end of this month. So another 2 weeks at least with regards to the consultation going on there as well. And I'm more than happy to take questions from members.
Thank you for that, Councillor Waters. I'll open it up to questions. Councillor Story, do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just wanted to ask a question about the cycle path investment. It's something that I'm very supportive of. I think it's really important, especially post-COVID, that we invest in our cycleways and encourage people to get out of their cars. People won't want to go on public transport, so we need to make sure we invest in cycleways. My inbox has been jammed with businesses who have been contacting me saying that they haven't been consulted enough or engaged enough. And I thank Richard for coming back to me with some information that I've managed to provide to them about the consultation. But there are a couple of things that I wanted to reference today. One is perhaps if it will be useful, perhaps if you could set out for us in this meeting in a public setting just what consultation did happen, so people understand better what consultation took place. And secondly, just about what options were considered, because we do have some cycle provision on Martin Road, Acklam Road. How did we arrive at Linthorpe Road as the location for the cycle path investment? Were other areas considered? What criteria were used to choose Linthorpe Road? Obviously, Martin Road would cause less disruption to businesses, but I take it there would be a process we went through to decide on Linthorpe Road. And is there any chance that there'll be future investment in those areas? Will we see further cycle investments, or maybe expanding the improvements to cycle paths in other areas on other main roads, and even off-road cycling as well? Because there are a lot of cycle paths through the Beck Valleys and other areas that could do with some investment too. So I guess just if you can update us on the consultation that took place, how did we arrive at Linthorpe Road and what other options were considered? And is there any chance of further investment in other areas that could bring forward more investment in cycle paths?
Councillor Waters, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you for that, Councillor Story. So yeah, with regards to the consultation, with this being a Tees Valley funded operation, the consultation was done through them, and that's been done in the last couple of weeks in January, and they're currently analysing the results of that to see what the feedback was. Now, as well as there is bad feedback from the businesses, which I understand that and I get that. There's a couple of points that we have to make with regards to this. The car parking on Linthorpe Road is purely, it's 30% utilised, so only 30% of the people that park there actually pay to park there during the designated times. We only collect 30% of the revenue. Now, this is an area of parking that is, the mass majority of the time is full. So again, it's something that from a value and money point of view for the council, if we're only bringing in 30% of the revenue that we're bringing in, we have to look at as to why that is. So that played a huge part in this. With moving on to, you said consultation. What was the next thing? Sorry.
How did we arrive at Linthorpe Road, and what were the criteria? How do we decide on that road rather than Martin Road or Acklam Road or other sites?
And then the infrastructure further. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I think I partly answered that question in that is as to why Linthorpe Road. As yes, there's a lot of businesses there, but there is massive amounts of car park. Now, we have looked back and looked at some of the responses from the consultation, and hopefully we're going to bring forward in the next couple of weeks just some further ideas to support the businesses in this area that we have listened to them, took their concerns on board. So we are looking at it as a council now as to what we can do to improve that scheme, whether we can work with some of these businesses that are able to have cycle parks out the front of them to pull up. What we look at with regards to the parking for their staff as well, which has also been raised as concerns, and the actual owners themselves. So again, these are things that we've took away from the consultation, and we are what we're going to do moving forward. As for further infrastructure, absolutely, this is a gateway into the town. I think this is why Linthorpe Road is so important. It is a gateway into our town centre, and the massive majority of the housing infrastructure is coming over through Linthorpe, down the main roads into Linthorpe, into the town centre itself. So I think that when we look at infrastructure that needs to be improved, when we're looking at sites like Stainsby, when we're looking at Hemlington, looking at all these other areas in and around that area, then to be linked into that. This needs to be something that we have a total change of in our town. We utilize cycling, we don't do it enough, we are reliant on our cars, and I think this is just the first steps in linking these sites further around the town and getting them joined up and having a proper cycling infrastructure for our town.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Starry?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, just to follow up, I mean, it's not really a question, more of a comment really, but I mean, if we are looking at other sites in future, and some of them may well, actually, areas of it might go through my ward, it would be really good if we could sort of involve as many of the ward members as possible who have reference to those areas, so that we can be involved with that as we go through that process, because I personally would really like to be involved with seeing more cycle provision and better cycle routes. And if we do decide to do that through off-road cycling, Martin Road, Acklam Road, whichever roads we choose, I would like to be involved with that, and it'd be great if we could bring forward investment in future years.
Councillor Waters, do you want to?
Absolutely, I'll make sure that we do that and we involve you. Apologies on this one. It, like I say, with this one, it was a lot of TVCA led, but it had been on the cards for a number of years, I believe. 3-4 years, it had been something that the council had looked at, and a lot of the investigatory work that had been done was a few years ago. So apologies for not involving you further, and I'll make sure that that when we are looking at things like this, that we involve you further.
Right, I've got Councillor Coop, and then Councillor Odin, and then Councillor Cook. So I'll take Councillor Coop.
Thanks, Chair. You mentioned the Stainsbury development. I know that it's going out to more consultation at the moment. What are you going to do to consult if a decision is made not to go along to Mandale Meadows, etc.? So all the traffic is going to go out on Low Lane, which would be, for my ward, an unmitigated disaster, because you've got the new development which is going ahead at Hemington Grange with a lot of cars coming out there, and you're going to have one heck of a pinch point on the Parkway. And as someone who uses, or certainly uses the Parkway quite a bit, quite often in the morning, when we get out of COVID, which we're all hoping to be shortly, there are many times where the Parkway's backed up right to the Hemington turning off. So if people were coming out of there, they'd go across the Parkway, see it is, then end up. So all that'll do is cause a huge problem. It'll direct all the traffic up Acklam Road and any other road you can do. So I think, depending on the outcome of this, I'm personally hoping that the Spine Road will go ahead as it's always been in the plan. But that's up to the consultation and decisions. Not only would it reduce the number of houses that can be developed there, which will have to be put somewhere else, so it could end up in Stainton, could up in Clonthorpe, could end up anywhere. My main concern would be traffic. Having seen that road develop from what it was to what it is, the amount of traffic that does use those roads is quite horrendous. It's meant to be at capacity, although people do say, well, how can you prove it? Well, you only have to drive on it to know that. So if this was to go in that direction, I think you need some consultation with all the wards in that area, and I would certainly include Stainton and Thornton in that ward, as well as Hemington, etc. So will you commit to consulting with us if there was a problem? Thank you.
Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Councillor Coop. Yes, I think a point was put out by the Deputy Mayor last night, and this has been a bone of contention, the road through Mandale Meadow, for a number of years. I will briefly talk on it now, and then again, if anyone wants to have any further conversation with me, I'm more than happy to do that. The road through Mandale Meadow was decided long before this administration came in, due to the housing development across Middlesbrough, across the south of Middlesbrough, and to the east of Middlesbrough. It's always been decided that this road had to go in. It was wrote into the local plan in 2014. It became law then that a road had to go through there. I think what we've done is explored absolutely every single possibility of mitigating that and what we can do to protect the meadow. Now, on top of that, there was also a plan to put a number of houses. With it being a council-owned site, there was a number of houses due to go on there. We've took them off so that we can preserve absolutely as much of the meadow as possible. But it is very, very likely that there will be a road through Mandale Meadow. Now, the consultation is with regards to the housing and to the development of Stainsby. And again, whether Stainsby is done or not, whether Stainsby is built or not, there will likely be a road through Mandale Meadow, because it isn't, like you said, there's pinch points right across Middlesbrough. And Highways England stipulated that as part of the local plan that Labour introduced in 2014, that they would have to build a road through there. There is no way out of that. There is no way around that, as a lot of the developments have already started, and a lot of the areas of land have already been sold to private developers in the long run as well. So just to alleviate that concern, it is likely that a road is going to go through there. If it doesn't go through there, then I am more than happy to consult with members of the surrounding wards.
Councillor Coop, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so, Chair. I would like to have a chat with you sometime over it, because I'm still concerned about the sheer volume of traffic in that area, but that can be put off for perhaps a few weeks or so. But yes, no, that does, because it always has been part of it. It's not just the fact that it relieves there, it relieves other areas as well, because the work has been done at the moment on the Mandale interchange, because anybody that uses the A19 Parkway knows that the traffic backs up. And the idea of that road is also to allow people who may want to go to Acklam or whatever, who may go at the next interchange, would go across there. So it will be a relief for the traffic. So it is important that it goes ahead. And I understand people's concerns about the Mando Meadows, etc. I really do understand that, but this is something that we need to sort out. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Eden, did you have a question?
Yes, Chair. Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillor Waters, you mentioned £14 million for the High Street funds. Could you explain a little bit more about the High Street funds? What's this? What the stops the money going to be used for?
Councillor Waters.
And I'll bring Richard in part of this as well. Basically, the Future High Street Funds is to ensure that we have a future High Street. It's as simple as that. We look at the areas around us, we look at Stockton, we look at Redcar, where they've lost so many businesses from these areas. We want to be able to invest going forward. We want to be able to keep these businesses. We are a centre point for the whole of the Tees Valley. We want to keep our town centre. It is massively important that we keep this town centre in an ever-changing environment. So whether we repurpose certain areas, whether we look at doing things differently to the way that it's been done, I think the most important thing is that we secure our High Street. We have a future High Street, and I'll let Richard finish off with regards to just a bit more info as to some of the exact plans that the council have.
Can I just say there's a bit of background noise? So if you're not speaking, can you mute, please? Right, hand over to you, Richard.
Thank you, Chair. As Ashley said, we've secured 14 million through the Future High Streets Fund. We bid for 20, and we've been given 70% of that, along with other authorities. So it's been a fairly arbitrary cut, I think, just to make the money go a little bit further. We've got some pretty stiff targets within there about reducing the amount of retail space in the town. So a lot of the work that we'll be doing through that is about where retail spaces will be empty, that we need to replace them with things other than retail. So we'll be investing in bringing more leisure into the town centre, bringing more urban living into the town centre, and trying to make sure that what we call the town centre now, which is largely a retail destination, still retains a core of retail, but that it allows us to try and much broaden out the mix, because a retail centre on its own just won't survive. So there is money in there to gap fund some housing schemes. There's money in there to invest in bringing the leisure stuff in. And there's also some money in there for things like making sure that it's a better venue for cultural events and all those sorts of things to animate the area.
It's on mute there, Chair. There you go.
I couldn't get it off. Thank you for that, Richard. Councillor Eden, does that answer your question?
Yes, Chair. Yeah, thanks. Thank you very much. It does. Obviously, basically about this High Street, some of them derelict buildings and things like that. And as you say, as I think Councillor Wharton mentioned earlier on, I think that's the brilliant point, brilliant idea as well. Like derelict building to be look at something alternative, which is obviously the area needs probably. Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Richard, and thanks, Councillor Waters. Yeah, thank you.
Richard, are you wanting to come back on that?
Sorry, Chair. Yes, I should have mentioned that there's an executive report scheduled to come, I think, in April, which will set out what the full programme is for the Future High Streets Fund.
Thank you for that. Right, I'll bring Councillor Cook. Did you have a question, Councillor Cook?
I have a few, so if you can just cycle back to me. On the Future High Street Fund, I don't know if I'm too modern or if I'm just a bit mental, but I don't view the High Street as just being the town centre. So I'm wondering, is there any funding that's going to be provided to the likes of the Viewley Centre, Parliament Road, like the places where the people localised to those areas actually do their shopping and get their services? Are we going to see those sort of areas regenerated? In a similar way, Norfolk Shops in TS3, like, are we going to see everyone's high street regenerated, or are we just going to focus on one? Not that I want to spend all your money.
Councillor Waters, do you want to answer that?
Thank you for that, and Richard will end up coming in on this one as well. You're absolutely right. It's not just about the town centre; it's about the surrounding areas and our other high streets in Middlesbrough. There will be funds available in part. I think it's not just about, like you say, the businesses, the leisure and the retail. It's about the number of different areas. It's about the housing. It's about the way everything feels and looks. I'll get Richard to go into more details to exactly what will be done. And I think a lot of this will come forward in the plan that we have in the forward works.
Richard, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I will do. I guess the answer is possibly slightly broader than that, and I'm kind of not contradicting what Councillor Waters has just said. I think some of that stuff is more, it's in the programme for our Towns Fund bid. So we've got two funds. There's the Future High Streets Fund, which we've had secured, and then there's the Towns Fund bid, which we're still waiting for an answer on, but we've been given indications that we should be expecting a fairly positive result from that. So the Future High Streets Fund one does spread out beyond the immediate town centre to do some bits, but I think the kind of activity you're talking about there, Councillor Cook, is probably more aligned with the stuff that's in the Towns Fund bid. So Councillor Waters is right. Yes, there is plans to do that. It's difficult to say what and how until we know how much money we potentially get through that fund.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Cook?
Yep, that was great.
Have we got any more questions? Councillor Story and Councillor Hubbard, and then Councillor Cook. Right, I'll take Councillor Story.
Thanks, Chair. At a recent TVCA audit panel, I noticed that the TVCA have £19.3 million worth of funding set aside to assist local authorities in Tees Valley with supporting them to develop brownfield sites within Middlesbrough. And in light of the fact that brownfield sites are critical to our housing plans for the future, I was wondering if we'd availed ourselves of that funding yet, and if we hadn't, what plans do we have to draw down from that funding, and where might we use it?
Councillor Waters, do you want to answer Councillor Story?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Story. Yes, whenever funds become available, we always want a piece of that pie. We want to, obviously, we do have a lot of brownfield sites in Middlesbrough. Absolutely, I do feel that Richard will probably go into further detail as to what we'll be doing or where we'll be doing it. Something that every time there's money becomes available through the TVCA that we can be eligible for to improve Middlesbrough, then absolutely we'll be bidding for that.
Richard, did you want to add anything to that?
Yes, I will do, Chair. Thank you. We've got this money's being allocated out in phases, and we've got some allocated in phase one that we're just going through the last bits of the legal work on that at the moment. But it looks like we've got access to 7.9 million from that fund for preparation at Middlehaven. So as long as complete the legal and the contracting around that satisfactorily over the next month, we'll have that successfully, and that's going to be reported to executive in the coming weeks. We've also helped 13 secure some funding for a couple of their sites in town, so there's more coming to Middlesbrough than just the 7.9, and the 7.9 is not all this year, it's spread over a number of years. So there's actually a very disproportionate chunk coming to Middlesbrough, and obviously it's still open. We're still bidding for potentially other sites as well. As Councillor Waters said, we'll try and get as much of it as we can. But it looks like we've got a fair chunk of it coming our way.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Story?
Yeah, it's great. I'm glad to hear it's coming to the town. Brilliant.
Right, I bring in Councillor Hubbard. Councillor Hubbard, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Councillor Waters, you did mention, just referring back to Mandale Meadow and the Stainsby consultation, you did mention that the decision had already been made about the span road going through. Then later on you mentioned that if a road was likely to go through. Could we just have some clarity and maybe the council to put a statement out? Because as you rightly say, there's a consultation taking place at the moment. The residents will be devastated, but they are going through a consultation, and it'd be even worse if they concentrate on the efforts of trying to stop a span road that they can't stop, they should be concentrating on other things in that area. So it would be for best for everyone if there's some clarity on the matter. Thank you.
Councillor Waters, do you want to respond to that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you for the question, Councillor Hubbard. Yeah, it is very, very likely that the road will go through. Again, the consultation is for the housing development. Again, the local plan that was wrote in 2014 put in the law clearly stipulated that a road had to be built at the there in Middlesbrough to alleviate the pinch points. There was no, again, there was nothing that we could do as an executive. We have fought. Anthony High has literally fought tooth and nail. We've shouted, we've screamed, we've looked at every single thing that we could do to not put a road through. It's not just about the Stainsby development, that road. There is so many far-reaching implications that road has. And right now, I would say, yes, there is going to be a road. The council will do its absolute best to mitigate as any damage, to do it in a way that we can serve as much.
Councillor Waters, you're breaking up. You're breaking up, Councillor Waters.
Okay, what did you hear?
Yeah, do you want to start again and answer? I don't know whether everyone got that. I only got a bit of it, so do you want to do it again?
My apologies. Yeah, it is very likely that there is going to be a road going through there. It is devastating. It is an area in Middlesbrough that, again, we know is loved, but it was brought into law, like I say, in the 2014 local plan. There is nothing that we could do with regards to that. We have tooth and nail. Anthony High, like says, fought tooth and nail to make sure that there isn't a road going through there. Again, there is literally every other option has been explored. Every avenue has been explored. And again, like I said, I know it's absolutely, but as an executive, there's no there is nothing that we can do other than literally, like I said, there isn't an answer. There is not an answer as to what else we could do. As other housing developments have been built across Middlesbrough, this road had to go in to alleviate them pinch points. Like I say, it was approved by the inspectorate. It was improved by enshrined into law in the local plan, and that was the only way that we could get the other housing developments, not on Stainsby, not on the meadow itself. Like I say, we've took the houses, every house that was due to be built on there, every the piece of land itself. Again, we want to work with the community. We want to give that piece of land to the community. So I think it's really important. Again, we look at what has been achieved. We will mitigate the damage. We will make sure that it is done as sensitively as possible.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Hubbard?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Waters. Thanks, Chair.
I'll bring Councillor Cook, and then I've got Councillor Higgins. So, Councillor Cook, do you want to ask your question?
Yep, thank you, Chair. So, brownfield sites. We talk a lot about brownfield sites and how it seemingly doesn't impact people as much, and how it's better to build on brownfield sites. But I'm quite concerned that the communities around those brownfield sites aren't getting proper payments and being made to be able to develop them as what they are in other places. So I know that Nunthorpe, for that development site that's going to get a church built on it, or a religious site, the community is going to see some payments for that. But I believe for the first question and for the second question, we won't. And my concern is that even if we say we don't need to give anything because the site will do so much for the area, there is no park near those two sites. The only park that's there is Park on Glebe Road, which hasn't even got a bench. So if we can't even get a bench in Newport, I don't feel it's really fair that other places are getting much, much more in terms of compensation for their land. I just wondered if there's going to be any sort of change in that, to if not payment direct, payment in kind.
Councillor Waters, want to answer that?
Thank you, Councillor Cook. I think what we've seen as an administration is a town or a centre of town that's been neglected for so many years, to a point at which it's made land values in the centre of town. On the other hand, that we've had to balance up the fact that to balance these, we've had to sell pieces of land off that are worth money. So what we've had to do to compensate for the people, yes, in Nunthorpe, yes, if there's a land sale, what we've said is anywhere across the town that if there's a profit from that land sale, as in it comes above the council's asset value of it, then we will do our best to share that with people in the community. I agree that, again, it's not the people's fault in Nunthorpe that the land value is worth nothing. It's the fact that the area has been left to be neglected for so long. Now, what we are is bringing fantastic, absolutely fantastic housing developments with developers like 13 and that what we'll do is in the long term it'll hopefully bring the asset the value of land in and around that. So going forward, I'd absolutely like to see the fact that we're able to give money back to the people in Newport. I think what we do is put a lot of time and effort and resources and funding into these areas. And you're right, if we don't have benches in the park, then that's something that we need to look at. And again, we have the Towns Fund coming forward, and I'd like to see people like yourself coming forward and saying, we need this, this and this to make the area better. And like I say, we're doing this to make the whole town better. And if the town improve because we put 2 fantastic housing sites there, then there is going to be increase in value. There's going to want to be more people live there and do things there. Again, we'll be able to share that money with the people of Newport or wherever it may be. I think I've just had in the Thormsby that we're hopefully going to get a land sale for. And again, you're absolutely right. We need to be looking at the things that we don't have there and where we can improve these things. So like I said, please come to us. Let us know what we need to be doing in Newport as well, whether it be bench park, whether it be different things. Then we can look at what we can do with this town. And we'll work with you guys to make every area better that we can with this money.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Cook?
Yep, that's great. Thank you very much, Waters.
I think, Councillor Waters, I would just like to concentrate on the future and not the past. You know, the past's gone and what happened. So we're looking at the future. Let's just concentrate on the future. So I'll bring in Councillor Higgins and then Councillor Cook. Councillor Higgins.
Thanks, Chair. I was just wondering, you know, there is a lot of brown sites around Middlesbrough, and I hope that the council don't decide to just give the land, or I know they haven't given it, but it's 199-year lease or something. I would hope that they would keep some for to be able to employ people in Middlesbrough. And also it would enable the council to get lots of apprenticeships. Now, you know, for me, that's moving forward. It's letting the council keep the land, because at the moment that Gresham, we won't get any rent. 13 will get it. We haven't got the land for 199 years, and all we'll get is council tax. So in future, if there's going to be any building, I know it'll take a lot because we haven't got the people at the moment, but there's youngsters crying out for apprenticeships, and there's older men who have done these jobs, desperate for jobs. So could you please bear that in mind? I know it might be too much to ask, but I had to ask it.
Councillor
So, thank you.
Waters, Councillor Waters, do you want to respond to that?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Higgins. No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. We can't just say that we only get council tax, though. And just, again, this is just me just being as honest as possible. We've got 139 houses being built in the first phase of Gresham. If we just say as an average of £1,000 per house a year, that's £139,000 a year the council will bring in over a 10-year period. That's 39 million, is it? Am I doing my figures right? No, 1.39 million. That'll do. That's money that's coming in, and we do that all over, and we do that in little pockets, and we do that in little places, and that's what we're trying to do to some of these brownfield sites in the town. If you look at to make digital, we have an opportunity as a town, and we don't have any massive building corporations in and around that area in Middlehaven. So what it does is it means we can put the infrastructure in first. What that means is that we can train our youngsters up and we can train them in Middlesbrough for the jobs that we want to bring forward in Middlesbrough. Jobs, in technological jobs, in jobs that are going to see them into the future. And one of the really concerning things that I found, again, is I stand as a chair on one of the schools, on one of the boards, sorry, and I see, and I've spoke with a number of different schools across the town. IT isn't taken up as well as where it should be. And we have jobs, but we've got people from Manchester coming to fill these jobs because we've got a skills gap here in Middlesbrough, and I think that's something that working with Middlesbrough College, working with the different schools in and around the area to push that, we can give these guys some opportunity going forward, knowing that they've got a career when they come out of school or out of their further education, and that we can provide that to them. So yeah, you're absolutely right. We do need to look to the future, and that's one thing that we are doing.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Higgins?
Yes, thank you, Ashley. Thank you.
I'll bring in Councillor Coop, and then I've got Councillor Platt and then Councillor Halawi. So, Councillor Coop.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yes, I would agree, looking to the future. But if we don't use too many of the brownfield sites, we have a finite amount of greenfield sites. Unlike Stockton, unlike Hartlepool, unlike Redcar, they have vast areas. I'm not saying they're going to develop it all, but we have a finite area. It's either going to be in Stainton Thornton, it's going to be Colby, or it's going to be in Nunthorpe. So we have a finite area of sites we could possibly use. If we use those too quickly, that's it. You can't just get some more unless they expand the boundaries of Middlesbrough, which I suppose is possible. So we need to look at the brownfield sites. And where I do understand what Councillor Higgins is on about, you know, we do need to keep some things for apprentices. We do need to keep some businesses. But I'm sure that can be included. I'm sure that as part of the big plan, from what I've seen of plans for Middlesbrough, it will be included. So I would like to look at more brownfield sites. I don't want to look at too many greenfield sites, and I would like to keep as many of the sites of special interest like Mandel Meadows. I understand where people are coming from with that, but you know, you can't just build on anything that's green. If it's green, please don't just build on it. There are lots of sites coming up. The council do own a lot of land in the south part of the town, in Colby and in Hamilton Grange, etc., and in Nunthorpe. But please just don't build on it all. Can we keep some of our countryside so there's somewhere to walk? It's great. We have a fantastic footpath route and a factory walking route. But if we're just going to walk between houses, we want some greenfield sites. We want some other bits and pieces. So can I be assured that you will look at brownfield sites as well as greenfield? And then we have a look into the future, because the way we're going, if we're not careful, we're going to go out to land in about 25 years' time. Thank you.
I'll bring Councillor Waters in, and then I'll bring you back in, Councillor Higgins.
Thank
I'm
you.
sure you want to talk on this, so I'll bring Councillor Waters in first. Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And again, this is why we're looking at the urban living. The mayor's got a vision to bring people living into town, and that's what we have to do. We want to protect the area in the outskirts of our town, protect the beautiful areas. I keep saying.
Councillor Waters, sorry, can I interrupt you there? You're breaking up again. If maybe if you try and switch your video off, that might help. Is that okay?
How's that? Is that any better?
Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
Yeah, that's why I turned the video off. Apologies. So you're absolutely right. It's part of the mayor's vision. We want people living in town. We want people living. We want to develop these brownfield sites. And as Councillor has been saying, we have to look at the balance on that. But that's why we're looking at businesses. We're looking at technological businesses. We're looking at building the digital city, putting that infrastructure there in place first, so that we can provide long-term jobs to the younger people that are coming through. And if we want to protect the green areas, we want to have these beautiful places in and around our town, then we are going to have to use a lot of these sites in the centre, these brownfield sites. Now, again, I know the frustrations, Amanda. I know what it is, and I get it. But this going forward, the next local plan that comes out, we will be protecting absolutely as much of these green belt sites around the south of our town.
Councillor Cook, that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I understand that, and I want to do it. I'm not against development, but I'm just against building willy-nilly till the cows come home. We need to look at things and preserve what we've got, because our space is finite. We haven't got all the space that the other councils and things have. So I understand what Councillor Higgins is going to say, and I agree. You know, I've worked in various factories and businesses around here, and we need to provide jobs, and we need to provide things for the youngsters growing up. They need apprentices. I totally get that and agree. So I'm sure that both can be done and will achieve greatness for this town. Thank you.
I'm bringing Councillor Higgins. Did you want to come back on that?
I do, yes. Councillor Cooper, I didn't mention green lands. I mentioned brown fields. So that's where I was talking about. That's what we should be building on. And that's where we should be putting the tradesmen and the apprenticeships. I didn't say that we had to build in your area or any other green area of Middlesbrough. So, you know, I don't know whether I didn't make myself clear or not, but I didn't mention green.
Okay, thanks for that. I'll move on to Councillor Platt. Councillor Platt, did you have a question for Councillor Waters?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Councillor Waters, you mentioned local plan a number of times there, especially at Mandale Meadows. In the planning on Friday, the local plan for St David's was a maximum of 115 houses, yet the planning people pushed it up by 20% to 139 and it was passed. So my question is, what use is the local plan?
Councillor Waters, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you for your question, Councillor Platt, and thank you, Chair. Yeah, the local plan is absolutely important. It is enshrined in law. It's something that we take approval on. As for planning, I'm not accountable to plan. They will make a decision based on what works in there, whether it be if more certain aspects are being looked at, whether it be we need more bungalows on a site, we need more flats on a site. Certain things will be looked at and taken into consideration to make sure that it's a fair and equal balance. I don't know whether Richard wants to add any more on that as well.
Richard, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, just briefly, and as Councillor Waters says, the local plan is the important document. It's the thing that guides the planning committee as to, you know, what can and can't be taken forward where. But it isn't 100% specific on every issue. There is always flexibility in there on some of those things. And I know for a fact, numbers on a particular site is one of those areas where if it can be justified through good design that you can get more on there, there isn't actually a good reason to turn it down. So it's always difficult to say the local plan's really important and it's got this high status. And then if something comes forward that is slightly different to that, it still gets approved. There is some flexibility around some of those issues, and good design and numbers is one of those things. Not having a local plan would lead to chaos, and not having a very clear and good local plan would mean anybody can build anything anywhere just about, as long as they can get it through a planning committee. So it's there to guide the planning committee. And again, I know that some local plans don't contain numbers on individual sites, ours does. And it's there as a guide to indicate what should go on there. But if people can justify a different mix or a different design quality, that can be taken into account by the planning committee.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Platt?
Yes, sorry, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Halawi, I think you've got a question.
Thank you,
Councillor
Chair.
Halawi.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Waters, I'd like to take issue with you on a matter of principle regarding the answer you gave to Councillor Cook about the disposal of land and any benefits that might be accrued to the local communities. So if we take the example of Nunthorpe, where the land's being disposed of, and I'm not sure exactly what, but there was some notion of the local community councils having benefit from that. And if you compare that with the disposal of land in, say, Newport, where you answered Councillor Cook by saying, oh, well, if we need an extra bench, we'll get them a bench from some other tranche of funding. That's not a fair principle, that when land is disposed of, there's some other type of benefit that accrues to the local communities. So supposing we say that we go into some other area of funding, some of the tranche of a funding pot to get money for Newport, we'll only be in that with equal shares with other areas similar who also need a new bench or whatever. So I think the basic premise that we're working on there is unfair, that some areas get benefits and some areas don't from the use of land that's being used in the vicinity of their area.
Councillor Waters, do you want to respond to Councillor Halawi?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Halawi. I understand you take issue with that, but again, then we have to look back at what Nunthorpe's been promised over the years. In 2012, I think it was, with one of the sites there, they were promised a community centre and a doctor's surgery that wasn't delivered on. So we have to look at ways that where we haven't honoured promises in the past, we have to make up for that, and we have to make good going forward. If we want to be able to go forward, then that's the way that we're trying to do this. And we're not just trying to do it for Nunthorpe, we want to do it across the town. And again, I come back to the issue that the town centre has been left for so long, the Newport ward has been left for so long in a derelict state that it's worth nothing. I understand that that's not the residents' fault, but it's all the residents' fault in Nunthorpe that promises weren't committed to. And what we're trying to do is work with community councils, work with residents to make right on the things that haven't been done in the past so that we can move forward, that we can get common consensus on certain issues and that we can move forward. And it's not just about a bench. You're absolutely right. As you know, I don't know whether you do know, I live in Newport, and it's not an area that has been looked after. It needs more investment, it needs more time, it needs more police, it needs more street wardens, it needs a lot more of a lot of things. But I think the positive thing that we need to take from that is the development coming forward there, that we're going to see some fantastic development, some new houses to give hopefully the people in the area that there is going to be hope that the area is going to be improved after being left for so long.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Alawi?
No, I think it supports my argument that the people, I don't want to give you a history lesson into the development and lost promises that were made to the people of Newport over recent years. And that's due to the government's promises that they broke to the people of Newport. By the way, the issue of a bench was only a tongue-in-cheek analogy of developments. I wasn't talking about a bench as such. It was an analogy for a whole host of developments that are necessary. So really, you're talking about promises in Nunthorpe that are being kept, and promises made to the people in Newport by the government who let them down over the years through the non-development of that brownfield site. Oh, well, it doesn't matter about those promises being broken. I don't want to extend the argument. I just want to make that point. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. I will bring in Councillor Story and then Councillor Cook. Councillor Story.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just in light of the recent announcements about the snow centre and the fact that that development clearly is not going to be taking place anymore, I was in a briefing with ward colleagues about Middlehaven and the developments over there. I think it was last week. And one of the things I was asking about was what are we planning to do with that site now that the snow centre is not likely to happen? It's an absolutely key site because of the leisure and the sort of retail or hospitality offer that was going to be put there. It's key to providing that kind of sustainable community in Middlehaven and the old St Hilda's area, getting housing up there, get a school up there, we can bring the town hall back into use. That site needs to be developed too, and with all the infrastructure investment, the new dock bridge, the road infrastructure that was put in place a few years ago, that stuff lends itself to make that a very attractive site. So I was keen to know how we might see that site develop if it isn't going to be a snow centre, and what we might be wanting to do with it.
Councillor Waters, do you want to respond to Councillor Story?
Thank you, Councillor Story. Absolutely. Now, the snow centre has been on the table for a long, long time, and what that's prevented us from doing is looking at other options and looking at other things that can be done there. But we do know that there is interest on the site, whether that be whether to expand, whether we look at putting crucial housing on there, whether we look at other areas that provide that leisure input and that just the extra something that makes Middlesbrough a destination. So yes, there will be things going forward, and obviously you will be involved in any consultations going forward with regards to where it is.
I think Richard wants to add to that. Do you want to add to that, Richard?
Thank you, Chair. It was just in terms of timescale for Councillor Story's benefit. We are looking at bringing a report to executive this month about the future of Middlehaven, and that will set out how we're going to develop a strategy, which isn't a change of direction. It isn't a complete rewrite of what's happening at Middlehaven. It just set out how we're looking at the rest of Middlehaven, and the intention is that we'll bring back a strategy within 3 or 4 months to executive that will show what we're going to try and do on each of these sites and in what order, because that's the critical thing for us, that with the snow centre not happening, that's yet another site at Middlehaven that if we put onto the market for the same purpose at the same time is too much. So we're looking very much at what's the plan for phasing all of that. Well, there's a report coming to executive this month to set that out, and then the actual strategy itself will come back to executive within 3 or 4 months. And obviously, as ward members, you'll be involved and consulted on that.
So, answer your question, Councillor Story.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I look forward to being involved with that process. That sounds good. Thanks very much.
I'd like to ask Councillor Waters, the development for the new community centre in East Middlesbrough, which replaced Southland Centre, when is that going to be happening? I know we've got the money there and the money's being put aside for that. So when's that going to be happening?
There's a lot of discussions. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Yeah, it will be happening. There is money there. The community want to see more done with that money at the moment, and what we're looking at is looking at every avenue, everything that we can do to make sure that it's a community site fit for purpose, not just put something in the ground that isn't what the community wants or wants to see. It will be coming forward. It's just we're trying to niggle out the finer points of it. I'd add any more into that.
Yeah, I can do, Councillor. The funding for the community centre, we've got a large chunk of it already in the council's capital programme, and that's approved. We're waiting for the rest of what we require, which is currently in the bid for the Towns Fund. So if we get the confirmation of the Towns Fund, which we're hoping that we'll get some confirmation of in March, that would allow us to commit to a full programme of, right, we can say we're going to spades in the ground on this date and it'll be finished by this date. But because we already have a large chunk of the money in the council's capital programme, we've already started that process. So the planning application is being prepared. The work's going on with the community about the design of the centre. It's just, we're having to do a certain amount of it before we know about the rest of the money. And as soon as we know about the rest of the money, we can kind of give people a full programme because we can commit to it then. What we don't want to do is that the amount of money we have is not enough to build what the community want. So if we don't wait for that top up amount, we can get on with something, but it won't really be what they're after. So we're getting on with the process, but it can only really accelerate once we know in March whether we've got that money or not.
Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Cook, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. But just before I ask, I've got one sort of quick, slight question. We've heard a lot about the Towns Fund, or about what the Towns Fund is going to do. I'm just sort of eager to make sure that ward councillors are involved at appropriate times, because if I've heard right, Richard already promised me about 10 million at least. So I just want to make sure that we sort of, because we know our communities quite well, and I want to make sure that things aren't done to them, it's done with them. And the best way of doing that is by keeping the ward councillors involved. My other question is selective landlord licensing. I know I've asked this several times, but I'm determined that we're going to get some sort of kickback from the government on it. Has there been any sort of update to basically extend for free the selective landlord licensing scheme in Newport, given that we've lost so much time due to COVID? If it would only feel fair.
Councillor Waters, do you want to respond to Councillor Cook?
Yep, thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Chair. So on the first point, yes, absolutely, we need to involve ward councillors with what they want to see going on in the ward. And you're right, the most effective way for us to communicate it is through the councillors as well. So yeah, I'd like to see that going forward myself. Secondly, with regard to selective landlord licensing, I'll have to get back to you with an answer on that. Again, this is we don't know whether we can, we don't know whether we're allowed. So this would need a proper answer that I don't have for you right now. I don't know whether you would, Richard, but
No, I wouldn't, unfortunately. That comes into your portfolio, but not mine.
Yeah, no, I don't think there is an answer right now. Hopefully, yeah, there might be something come forward with regard to extending it, but I don't know the ins and outs of it. I can't give you a yes or a no right now. As soon as I know, I'll make sure that you're aware.
So you will get back to Councillor Cook then?
Absolutely.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Cook?
Yep, both were great.
Right, any more? Councillor Halawi?
Yes, please. Could I go back to an issue that was raised early on in the meeting? But I've just been reflecting on the answer and thinking about Councillor Story's issues about all the emails we are getting as local councillors about the cycle lanes. Could we please have a copy of the consultation document that I don't think we saw? In fact, I haven't seen it. And I'd like to know an analysis, please, of the responses and details that could be shared, because given we're getting that many people complaining, I'd like to know if they actually were, gave their opinions in the consultation, were consulted with, because there's some anomaly there that is quite great concern. Especially, I'd like to see the alternative proposals to avoid having cycle paths on Linthorpe Road itself and some of the alternatives that could be used. So it's about details on the document, the consultation, the results and the analysis. Thank you.
Councillor Waters, would you like to respond to Councillor Halawi?
Yes, certainly. Thank you for that, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. The TVCA did the consultation. The documents will sit with the TVCA as the results will come through from them as well. I'm sure that we'll be able to share the outcome of that. It was widely announced. It was widely represented. I was on the radio a number of times with regards to it as well, and spoke to the press during the whole consultation process. And again, urged as many people to get in touch as possible. I know it was put out through our Facebook pages. I know where we could, we contacted as many people as possible. Richard, do you have any further on that?
No, it's really just to say yes, we can get you all of that. Obviously, the consultation's closed, so we're on analysing the results of it now, and we will come back to you with this is what people put in, and this is what we're looking at doing as a result as well.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Halawi?
Just, do you have any benchmarks then for moving forward? So supposing that only a low number of people responded to the consultation, supposing there was an overwhelming amount of objections, does that mean that the plan will be revised and reviewed? Where would that leave us?
Councillor Waters?
Oh, sorry.
Again, till an analysis is done of the results, I don't want to give you an either way, because again, we might be talking 1 in 10, we might be talking 10 in 1,000. I don't know the answer right now. So right now we'll review the analysis, we'll see what's actually said, and we'll go from there. Again, this isn't money that Middlesbrough Council's having to spend. This is money that's coming from the TVCA. So it'll be a discussion that, based on the analysis of what actually came in, then we'll come to a decision from that point.
Richard, do you want to add anything to that?
Sorry, Chair, I was just going to say something very similar. We know we've had quite a good response to it, so we will get a decent analysis over to you.
Thank you for that. Have we got any more questions? No? Well, I'd like to thank Councillor Ashley Waters for attending today and giving his presentation and taking questions. And also Richard, thank you for that. You're welcome to stay, but if you want to go, please feel free. So thank you once again. And we'll move on to the agenda. Right, we'll move on to the agenda, which is going to be the agenda item 8, which is the final report of Culture and Community Scrutiny Panel, Social Cohesion and Integration. And I believe Councillor Linda Lewis is going to present that on behalf of Councillor Chris McIntyre. So I'll hand over to you, Councillor Linda Lewis.
Thank you for that, Chair. I trust members have read the report. The report for OSB examined community cohesion in Middlesbrough, what work is being carried out to support it, and if it could be developed further. The panel learned Middlesbrough has participated in a number of community cohesion initiatives, being one of the first to contribute to the Pathfinder programme in 2003, and that it continues to prioritise and embed community cohesion in the work it carries out. After gathering evidence from a number of internal and external sources, the panel heard that since the early 2000s, a number of internal initiatives have been implemented. Internally, this included refugee and asylum seeker support, the Stronger Communities Middlesbrough project, and more recently, locality working. To help direct such initiatives, the panel also heard how the council had partnered with Teesside University to undertake a community mapping exercise that aimed to provide an update profile of the town's various communities. Externally, the panel heard how the police were reintroducing neighbourhood policing to complement existing PSCO provision and had developed a community engagement team whose intention was to build better relationships and understand community dynamics, all of which would tie in with council operations such as the neighbourhood warden team. The full conclusions and recommendations of the panel are contained within the report presented to members. However, the panel were reassured that the council and its partners are continuing to work simultaneously to ensure community cohesion remains a key point priority for all Middlesbrough residents. And I would like to say finally that the topic was covered before COVID hit, so was delayed. And could I suggest, Chair, that members, if they have any questions, that they email me direct, and then I can answer questions to all the members of the panel. And I'm going to have to give my apologies, Chair, because I'm going to have to leave the meeting, if that's okay.
Thank you for that, Councillor Lewis. So are you not able to give an update on the Chair's update? Are you not able to?
But I am going to have to leave the meeting.
All right, okay, that's fine, yes.
So if members have questions, I will answer them via email.
All right, thank you. Thank you for your attendance.
Thank you.
Right, we'll go on to the Scrutiny Chair's update, and we'll take the Adult Social Care and Services Scrutiny Panel, and it's Councillor Jim Platt who's going to give us that update. So I'll hand over to you, Councillor Jim Platt.
Okay, thank you, Chair. We had our February meeting yesterday of the Adult Social Care and Services Scrutiny Panel. Our topic was to support for carers, and we had a verbal update from Eric Scolali, Director of Social Care and Health Integration. We also had Lynn Beavers, Head of Social Workers for Adults, who gave us an insight to the work carers do, both paid and unpaid. Eric was asked if all care home patients and staff had been vaccinated, and he replied that all homes had been offered the vaccine. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Councillor Platt. Has anyone got any questions for Councillor Platt? Councillor Higgins?
Yes, thanks. Councillor Platt, did anybody ask? I know you said that every home had been offered the injection, but my worry is if people don't take it and other people do, then I don't. Are the members or the residents in that home fully covered? I'm really concerned about this because it's happening across the country. I mean, I know it's not mandatory, but there must be something that can be done. Do you have any idea, or am I asking the wrong person?
No,
sorry, Jim.
You are actually, but all of our care homes are privately owned, and as Eric said, they've all been offered it, and he can't make them take it if they don't want it. But he didn't have any figures.
All right then. Before I go any further, regarding the final report that Councillor Linda Lewis presented on the culture and communities, can everybody agree to that report?
Yeah, agree, Chair.
Although I was going to ask a question or two. I mean, I can put them in writing as Councillor Lewis suggested, if that's okay with you, Chair.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So if that's agreed, then we'll move on. And the next update is Children and Young People's Learning Scrutiny Panel, and that's Councillor Stephen Hill. Councillor Hill, can I hand over to you?
Thanks, Chair. At the last meeting of the Children and Young People's Learning Scrutiny Panel held on the 18th of January, the panel were presented with further evidence regarding our scrutiny topic of behaviour, discipline and bullying in schools. Officers were in attendance to provide detailed information on the causes of pupil behaviour problems and data on the characteristics of excluded pupils. Following the evidence, the panel also received an update on education and COVID-19 recovery from the Director of Children's Services, which has now become a standing agenda item. And the panel's next meeting will be on the 23rd of March, where we hope to continue our investigation into behaviour, discipline and bullying in schools by hearing evidence from middle schools and head teachers.
Thank you for that, Councillor Hill. Has anyone got any questions for Councillor Hill? No, thank you. We'll move on then. Have we got Councillor Garvey back, or are we hanging on a bit? I'll go to, well, we haven't got Councillor Linda Lewis to give an update on the Culture and Community Scrutiny Panel. So we'll have to leave that. We'll go to the Economic Development, Environment and Infrastructure Scrutiny Panel, and that's Councillor Brian Hubbard, who is subbing for Councillor Saunders. Councillor Hubbard, hand over to you.
Yes, thanks very much, Chair. The panel met on the 20th of January. 2 items were on the agenda. The first being the further discussions on the topic of broadband. And special invited guests were Mr. Leggett and 4 members of his team from City Fibre. They gave a presentation into the company's business plans and for the investment in Middlesbrough. City Fibre are a company that are currently building new networks across 60 cities with a projected spend of over £4 billion over a 5-year period, aiming to connect to 8 million homes. The investment alone in Middlesbrough is a projected spend of £40 million and is due to commence in April of this year and be completed sometime in 2024. The second item on the agenda, Chair, was the flood risk management update provided by Mr. Stuart Meal-Williams, who is the Public Rights of Way Officer for Middlesbrough Council. He discussed the current ongoing works and the 6-year programme that is planned. Our next date of the next meeting is Tuesday, the 23rd of February, and the items for discussion will be pest control and the Council's tree policy. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hubbard. Has anyone got any questions for Councillor Hubbard? No? Right, we'll move on then. And I'll take the Children and Young People's Social Care and Services Scrutiny Panel, and that's Councillor Garvey who's going to present that. Councillor Garvey.
Hi, Chair. I'm going to give a quick update. I've got a bit of a ward emergency at the minute. I'm on the phone, I'm on hold, so please bear with me if you have to go. Children, Young People's Social Care and Services Scrutiny Panel last met on the 21st of January, the 18th of January 2021. The Fostering Service Team Manager provided the panel with further evidence in relation to the panel's current scrutiny topic, focusing on foster carers in Middlesbrough, including information on recruitment. The Children's Services Programme Manager was also in attendance at the meeting and provided the panel with a presentation in relation to the corporate parenting strategy. The Executive Director of Children's Services gave a verbal update on the COVID recovery in children's services, and this will now be an item on every agenda. The panel's next meeting is scheduled for the 15th of February. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Garvey. Has anyone got any questions for Councillor Garvey? No? Thank you for that, Councillor Garvey.
Cheers.
I'll move on to the Health Scrutiny Panel, and Councillor David Coop's going to present that in place of Councillor McTighe. So I'll hand over to Councillor Coop.
Yes, thanks, Chair. At the last meeting, the Health Scrutiny Panel, which was held on the 2nd of February 2021, the panel received evidence from Jonathan Bowden, who South Tees Public Health, and Chief Inspector Jonathan Tapper from Cleveland Police in respect of Project Adder, a new government initiative which combines targeted and tougher policing, enhancement, treating and recover services. The acronym Adder stands for Addiction, Division, Disruption, Enforcement and Recovery. The project aims to bring together partners, including the police, local councils and health services, and Middlesbrough has the potential to access £4.8 million of funding between now and the end of March 2022. The panel heard about some of the additional services that we provide as a result of the funding and how the project aims to deliver reductions in the number of drug-related deaths, drug-related offending, and the prevalence of drug use over the next 2 years. And drug dependency at the next meeting of the 16th of February. There was an excellent little article in the Northern Echo, which I could refer you to as well. But I'm sure the panel members who were there, and a few of them are here today, would agree it was an excellent meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. Presenting that, Councillor Coop. Has anyone got any questions for Councillor Coop? No? Well, thank you to those chairs. Councillor Halawi.
Thank you, Chair. It's not a question necessarily specific. It's just a general question on our protocols. So if it's necessary for a scrutiny panel to be postponed, and then after that, that meeting is cancelled, and therefore it means that we don't have any meeting of that panel for a long time, is it possible that the panel can decide to temporarily look at something else, to put a substitute meeting in on a slightly different topic, or do we have to stick to the topic that we're working on? And if that's not possible, we just have to miss meetings. What's the arrangements for that in general terms, please?
I think that's actually going to be looked at. I know we did have Sylvia Reynolds on the call, but I think she's actually left. And I think there is a discussion about that if we have to change the work programme within scrutiny, add anything or change anything. So that is getting looked into, and I will get back to you on that, Councillor.
Thank you. I just want to say my opinion. It's not appropriate to sort of, well, postpone I can understand, but cancel meetings so we lose time to revise or look at anything else I think that's a shame to have to do that. It's not appropriate to the work of the scrutiny panel. So I would appreciate some feedback on that issue. Thank you.
Absolutely agree. Well, thank you to all those chairs, particularly the ones who stepped in, the vice chairs. So thank you very much. That was much appreciated. So we'll go on to any other urgent items. I'd just like to say about the following the decision made by this board at the call-in meeting on the 29th of January 2021 to refer the decision in respect of Nunthorpe Grange Farm back to the exec for reconsideration. The executive met on Tuesday, the 9th of February 2021 to consider this. The outcome of that meeting was that the recommendations put forward by the Overview and Scrutiny Board were noted but not endorsed. Therefore, the decision taken by the exec on the 24th of November 2020 still stands and will be implemented with immediate effect. So I just wanted to update that. I don't know whether anybody else has got any other urgent items. There's none that I'm aware of. And we've got the date of the next meeting, which is Thursday, the 11th of March at 4 p.m. So I'd like to thank you all for your attendance and your contribution today. Most welcome and goodbye.
Thanks, Janet. Another good meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair.